Greener and healthy city life. What does that mean? Trying to make cities, hear me? Try to make cities more enjoyable, safer, and also more sustainable places to live in. You're not surprised, probably. It's important this day and age. And why? Because, for obvious reasons, ongoing urbanization. So there's really pressure on limited space. It's a crowded place. Of course, climate change, pollution, CO2, and increasingly extreme heat and rain. So it's really important we take that into account when we look at designing urban spaces. But of course, a city is a very complex and a very multi-layered system, and it's a live system. We're living in these cities, so you can't just say in one sweep, let's do a service design project and let's change this. No, this has to be step by step, and it's long-term and gradual transformation. Even if we all know what needs to be done and we agree on that, it has to be built into schedules of renovating streets, budgets that are available. So these are long-term transformation projects, and service design plays a big role in that, as I will hopefully show you. But we have to be patient and very persistent as well. And we need efforts from many, many stakeholders. So there's, of course, the policymakers and all the systems in place for public transport and engineers to do all the actual public space design. But there's also businesses, and there's lots of services going on in the city, and it's their daily life. So that's all involved. And there's loads of people who have different lives, different preferences and needs. And they not only need to be taken on board, as in awareness and permission, but also they're local experts, as we all, as service designers, know, of course. So you want to tap into that and involve them in those processes. And that's where service design comes in, not a surprise to this service design crowd, of course, because service design brings people together and has a very holistic and empathic and collaborative way of working, and can look at that multi-layered system and then draw out things that can be improved on shorter term and things that can be improved on the longer term. And of course, as we know, it's not just one project, boom, you find the answer, you do it. Even every project is a step-by-step meandering path of engaging stakeholders, using lots of methods to get to your results, and then the next project does the next iteration, and the next project does the next iteration. So that was sort of a, let's say, general introduction on cities as an ecosystem and how that needs gradual change. Now I'll try to give you some examples of actual projects we worked on. And this is all in Amsterdam, and we call that approach Street Labs, and we've been working on that with the local council for about 7 years. So they started to ask us in 2016. There's different local councils who are responsible for part of the city and who have projects that may have a very particular focus. It might be all around space for pedestrians in a narrow street, or it might be around hotspots, which are for traffic, that it's very busy, or it might be about parking, bike parking. So we've done loads of projects, about 20, and a main method is doing co-creation sessions with usually a series of sessions in a project with lots of stakeholders, but of course also a lot of observations and ad hoc conversations with people, and sometimes surveys to make sure that everybody has a say. Yeah, let's look at Amsterdam. I think most people know the reputation of Amsterdam, a very bike-friendly city. We have really good infrastructure, and things flow naturally quite well. It's well supported by most people because most car drivers are also bikers in the Netherlands, so they're very considerate. We're also catering in terms of space for lots of different bikes. So it's not just a standard two-wheeler, but it's also box bikes that people use to bring children to school. A lot of elderly use scootmobiles. We call them scootmobiles. I don't know the international term. To also have an easy way to go around. Of course, there's children bikes, because people start to use a bike at a very young age, and you grow into it. So that all seems very happy, rosy, and shiny, but it hasn't always been like this. So this is a picture of the 70s, and Amsterdam was really clogged up with cars. And problematically, there was hardly any space for people to walk around. For cyclists, it was very unsafe. For children as well to play. So there were a lot of, at that point from the 70s, a lot of concerted efforts by activists to campaign for the bike lanes that we now have. And sometimes that's really good to remember. And of course, there was a lot of this still from a video where there's a lot of tension around that as well. Car drivers who didn't like the partitioning of the streets. So we've come a long way. Yes, the city is pretty bike friendly, but there's still a lot of challenges. As we sometimes call it, we've reached peak bike. There are so many bikes now. Bikes are almost like the cars in the 70s. They're clogging up paveways. Bike lanes are very, very busy. So again, there's a need to look at that, and that is being done in a very serious way. So it's difficult sometimes to pass parked bikes walking with a pet, or if you have any luggage you want to bring along. And even because the streets are very narrow in many areas of Amsterdam, there's not much space to move around. So with these cars parked on both sides, that's really a challenge. So that's where we come to the street labs. So quite often we get a request from a particular local council about a particular area, a couple of streets or a hotspot in the city, and to say we have budget and it's that this area is coming up for a redesign, and we want to do it participatory, to speak with people in the area, residents, businesses, also visitors, and to speak with them and to see what are their needs, what are their frustrations. And we get people together around the table. And what we often do in these labs is we may invite 30 people for a session, but we put them on tables in smaller groups, like 6 to 8 people around the table, so you can have a good focused conversation. There's several tables in the room, and then we'll do a few of those sessions on different days and different times, so many people can join. And one of us is then facilitating that conversation, and people point to, this is where I live, this is what I do, and people listen to each other, and they bring their point across of what their passions are, what their frustrations are, and also where they think things can be improved. So people don't only come to tell us, as in finding our insights, but also to tell us what they want. So there's a lot of modeling going on the table, and they're showing how they think things can be improved, and they don't always agree. So our facilitators often need to make sure that, okay, if this person wants this and this person wants that, how can we make that work together? And that's the beauty of these sessions, because these people all live in that same area. So they can't just only have what they want. You have to compromise, and that's an interesting aspect in the Dutch culture. We like discussing things out and then find the compromise that's the best for that moment. And we use, as you saw on many of the pictures, we use a lot of physical materials, which we call probes. It really helps to bring people around on the table and also focus the conversation, because we may have 2 hours, but you can spend easily a whole day with this group of people talking about everything of their street that's important to them. But we try to really hone the conversation in and bring little cards for them to annotate places where they are unhappy about things or very happy and want to change things. And we try to bring materials where they can model new situations. They can say, this is how it is now, but I have an idea how it can be later, and then they can discuss it together. And that always triggers a lot of co-creative energy around the table. And we use these materials because it's super important. The conversations go really fast. People have a lot of input. And it can drift away quite quickly. Of course, we record it, but we also write down a lot. And people like that, because you see that it's being documented immediately. And if we're lucky, they help us writing things down as well. And then we come out of these sessions, of course, with loads of material. Recordings and pictures, and your head is full, and notes. And that we need to process, of course, for the city project team that commissioned us. And they are, by the way, often there as well in the session. So they're there we facilitate the conversations, but to listen in and to sometimes engage in the conversation. So we write a report with the main things we've heard and the insights and the main points, but we also make a point of making what we call inspiration visual. So we often take a picture of the current situation and we animate on that what we are hearing that people are saying. We say, this is not a blueprint or a final design, but this is the direction of concepts that people are talking about. Well, this is a super easy one. You'll easily recognize that, but this maybe I need to explain. This came up in several street labs where people say you have these loading docks. We are for trucks, and they need to be kept free the whole day, but basically not the whole day they're used. The trucks come, and maybe for a couple of hours not. So the wish came up, can you, as the city council, not restrict that to a shorter time of the day, then we can use that space for other things later in the day. And that has been picked up, so that is being experimented at the moment in shaking in the city. And this is another experiment that immediately triggered follow-up by the city project team. And this is a market street. During the day, this is full of market stalls, but every evening they're being taken away. And in the evening, it's almost like a wild west of cars being parked, but it's also an area where many people come with their bikes because it's restaurants and pubs. So the idea came up to have, like, if you take the market stalls away, why don't you put in a space for bike parking? And that's a big success. It was prototyped, it was a success, and then it's implemented. And it's not only like the previous pictures I showed, it's all about sort of physical adaptations to the space, but many of the ideas that come up are also around communication and about services, as in making sure how things work, to make sure that the city council communicates in a better way how things work. So these flex use of the parking spaces needs to be communicated well. But also a big frustration of people is waste collection. If people don't put it out in the right day, it's there for the whole day. So those are the street labs. Lots of things come up, and it's always very animated conversation and dedicated input. Let's now look at what the city has done. So we've worked on this over 7 years, and looking back now for this presentation, I've been looking at these early projects as well. I see, oh, this already came up in the first street labs. But the funny thing is, you don't do a project and, oh, we do some service design and it gets implemented and this is the result. No, something comes up that is, just an example, something that's easy to try out. So this is one of the very, very early street labs. People were saying this is quite a small street and it's a pedestrian street. So there's no cars allowed, but bikes were everywhere. And actually you couldn't pass walking by, and definitely not with a kid or a stroller. And then people said, why don't you dedicate more clearly where we can and where we cannot put our bikes? And the city project team, the client team, immediately, they call it milk paint. You can put things up and a few rain showers and it's gone. So it's quite easy to try things out. So they tried to work with these boxes. And it worked very well, actually. So we were there, we were observing and speaking with people to see if people liked it and if the behavior changed. And yes, if you put a box, we will put our bikes in there, because it's not bad intentions that you just put it somewhere. It is, you don't know what's expected of you. So that these boxes have been coming up all over town in many different areas. And also, speaking about behavior change, these standards, many bikes in Amsterdam, I'm a biker in Amsterdam myself, we didn't usually have these standards. You would put your bike against a wall or something. But now we know that the boxes are there, we need standards. Now suddenly you see everybody having a standard. But it takes time. So there's some confusion for some time, but over time we learn it and we appreciate it. And this is another experiment that came out of the street labs. These are projected boxes. So this is one of the main squares in Amsterdam, Dam Square. And you don't want more signs there or more stuff. But it's also an area where a lot of people come in the evenings to go out, and they come with their bikes. And you don't want all these bikes during the day, but in the evening it's fine. So they have these projectors in the trees, and they project these bikes, and you're allowed to put your bike there during the evenings. And these projectors are also used in other areas. It was first trialed in the Pipe, an area where we worked first, and now it's here as well. So these first examples that I gave are typically outcomes that are almost like low-hanging fruit. It's an idea that comes up, and the project teams who hear it think, yeah, we can do it. It doesn't cost much. It won't be permanent, so they get permission to do that quite quickly, and if it works, you can do it more, let's say, permanent. This is the really long-term change that's been going on in Amsterdam and is still ongoing, and that is going underground. This is a car park, but now also used for bikes in one of those very, very narrow areas, a hotspot area. And for a long time in Amsterdam, that was a no-go, because going underground is super expensive. It's built on mud, and there's not much space. So for a long time, it's been resisted, let's say, from the city council, but we've reached peak stuff in the streets, so something had to give. And also in the street labs, we noticed, speaking with people about neighborhoods, well, they said, well, it's so full. The only thing we can think of to make space is get those cars that are parked out of the street. And where do they go? People are only, so they were dreaming about it, almost like, what if? Wouldn't it be nice? But then there was always this but. Where do I put my car? Because many people have and need cars. So an alternative needed to come. And those are these underground parking spaces, of which we have a few now. It takes a long time to build them. It's very disruptive. But once they are, it is a revolution for the people in the area because it cleans up the streets. And there's also in a few hotspot areas, this is one of the other main squares in Amsterdam, Leidseplein, a huge underground bike garage, just bikes, not even cars. Again, years of disruption of building it. It just opened. Also, bikers who first don't want to use it because it looks more work. But when you've used it a few times, it's actually much nicer. And here's another one. This is close to the Dam Square. And it's not just the things to build it. It's also the services around it. So there's been quite a long time of finding out what's the rule. Can you put your bike there for free? Do you need to pay? The thing is, people in Amsterdam have on average 1.8 bikes, so there's more bikes than people. That means if you make it completely free, this will be used as a shed. People will have their bikes. And then you have another problem downstairs. So in the end, after a lot of experimenting, and NS as well, we worked with NS on bike parking, found a rule that if you offer 24 hours free, people think that's fair. I'm just going to shop, or I'm just going out. But if you want to stay longer, you should pay a fee. And that works. This is the inside, just to give you an idea of the vastness of the space. And they're popping up, or not popping up, they're being built over years around town, so we're getting used to it. But also cyclists need to get their heads around it, because you come in and you think, is there any space here? There's dynamic signage, also from NS. Years ago we worked on signage that tells you where there's space available, and some help. How do I find my bike back? But once you've used it a few times, definitely these double racks, it's a bit inconvenient as a start, a bit daunting, but if you've done it a few times, we find that people first complain and then they're happy with it. And also, it's not just the garage, it's also, again, service system around it. So this is the entrance gate. And this is not peak time when we took this picture, but when it's peak time, there's loads of people coming. Again, we trialed that at NS parkings as well. It needs to be fast. So we've done several projects for prototyping the user experience and the speed of the system, actually. So you can get a tag on your bike, and you can go in, or you can use a bank card or a transport card. And also, of course, it needs some staff around that, people to help out, to explain it, a campaign to explain it to people. Where are these garages? How much time is it going to cost me? What does it cost? So it's not just the hardware, it's also people and staff. So this is quite a new role in Amsterdam. It's called fietscoach, which means bike coach, because the city council says this is transformation, and in the early days we do it gently. We just tell people what's expected of them. Where can you put your bike? Where can you not put your bike? So people are out there with these green vests, service support, let's say. So that's the early period, but after a while, of course, enforcement is also needed. So this is handhaving, which is enforcement, I think. So if you still, after a while, keep cycling in streets where you should be walking, for instance, you will get a penalty. And that is actually one of the big things out of the street labs. People are willing to sit with us on the table and talk about, let's say, beautiful scenarios of how it should be in the future, but they always say, if it's not enforced, it's not going to work. So they really say it's not only the design and the engineering, it's also the, let's say, the staffing, the support services around it. You need to make sure that it's taken care of as a system. So that's important to the city council. And of course, that's different budgets. One budget is a redesign, the other budget is maintaining the organization, the management around it. These are wonderful people. They go around the town, they spot old bikes and they take them away. And for a long time, they've been doing that sort of silently. But also, every street lab, people are saying, we appreciate that. We appreciate unused bikes to be taken away. And they have a secret method where they can mark a bike and they know if it's there still after 6 weeks. So that's a new rule. You can't have it for longer than 6 weeks in the same spot, unused. If you go and come back every day, they see it. And they take it away. And people are actually saying in the street labs, we want that because we want to be able to pass by. And this is also, of course, it's a no-brainer, but it's heartening that it always comes up in every street lab. People say there need to be special provisions. I'm happy to not park my bike in front of my house, but maybe around the corner. But my elderly neighbor or somebody with physical impairments, they need to have opportunities to park close to their house or close to the place where they need to be. So also there, they're prototyping ways while they are engineering the permanent solutions. And this is one of the indications of where it might be going in Amsterdam. This is one of the first neighborhoods that is it's ahead in the transformation of reducing car park spaces and taking the bikes off the pavement to make place for play and for meet and to pass around. And of course, there's still bays, so you need to be able to get to your house, of course, to deliver something or someone or pick up someone. So that's possible, but most of the parking is taking out of the area. And this area is quite ahead, so it's sort of in the future where some areas are still looking towards that future. And that brings me to the final point. 5 minutes, that's good. That's where climate change comes in, of course. So in our portfolio for a long time, we almost had like 2 strands of work. We were working on a lot of sustainability things around climate change with NGOs, and we were working a lot with service providers like governments or mobility organizations around design and public transport, but it was sort of 2 strands, and now it really comes together because every project we start with the City of Amsterdam, this is top of the agenda. It's not only anymore about safe and enjoyable space, it needs to be sustainable and drastically sustainable. There's a lot of heat stress, extreme rain coming, so we need to move to more green spaces in terms of better air, but also it means that we can hold the rain. If you have that kind of paved areas, it's going to be a mess. So that we're starting now a new series of street labs of an area that's now full on the agenda to start speaking with people about that. And it's not shall we, but it's how shall we. And the other point I wanted to bring across in this final wrap-up is that what I said before as well, that with this kind of transitions and this complex issues in a living system where we all live, it's not we just do a project and we have a result and that's that. No, it's every project is like a drop in the ocean in the right direction for change. And that means we're in that together. It's not just us as a design agency, but it's also other agencies. It's every department of the city council we're working with, and that needs to be done together, and it takes time. But you need to be dedicated and persistent and very collaborative. And that means we need to accept that for many of these changes, yes, it will be a mess, but we're heading towards where basically with common sense, you have the conversation, we know that we need to be heading there, and the citizens know it, but let's say the officials know it as well. So we need to keep going, having those conversations and trying to draw out what can be done now, quick and easy, and what can be put on the track for long-term and more permanent and more expensive changes. So this is, for instance, I'll explain, Fietsstraat, which means bicycle city. This used to be a car, and it means car is a guest. So you can drive here with a car, but you're actually driving as a car on a bike road. And that has turned out in the Netherlands a big success. It's been trialed because you need to slow down. And everybody needs to take care of each other. So that's a development that's ongoing. I think I'm done. I wanted to point out to this. Now I have your attention. We make publications. There's a few downstairs. You can look at the touchpoint table. And it's all about these kind of quite complex transitions for meaningful change. And one of them was called Catalyst, which we published last year. So if you are interested, look at the table downstairs and you can order them on Amazon. And then we have 2 minutes. And I want to point out 2 of my colleagues who are here, Ed and Jean. So yeah, we're happy to talk with you. If you're interested, just come up.
I think we've got, first of all, thank you, of course, for the talk. I was very excited to see some Amsterdam streets. Someone in the chat was commenting that they all look so beautiful. But good news for the in-the-room audience, because there's no questions online as far as I can see. So let's take 1 or 2 questions, same as before. The hand is already up. It's like an auction. So to the man in the 3rd row. Wait, the microphone is coming. That's for the other side. Yes.
Okay. What's your relationship with a landscape architect in this kind of project?
Landscape architects?
Yes.
In the city projects, we haven't had any landscape architects, but we work with what they call the engineering department. I guess there's landscape architects in there, but actually as in being with us in the project team on the table, I haven't heard anybody sort of introducing them as a landscape architect, but they're probably there.
Yes, just...
Hi,
sorry.
I'll go really quick. Thank you for the great talk. I was wondering how you choose the people to take part in these initial sort of meetups, because there's very different inhabitants.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how you say this person gets a seat at the table and this one doesn't.
A lot of attention goes into that. So basically, they put their hand up, so we advertise it quite widely, and that's the beauty of working with the city council. They can send a letter to every household, which is difficult for us. But we also hang around in the area, speak with people. We put up flyers. We go to the community centers. We speak with, there's usually, for the businesses, there's usually an association. Because we are aware if you just announce it, only a certain type of people come who are sort of active participators. So we try to also reach out to people who are who have to be invited maybe a couple of times. And then what happens is we get interest of people to be there, and we have what we call the long list. And we go to that long list to see that we have a good mix. So there might be, let's say, on that long list, a lot of people with sort of the same profile. And then we apologize to them. And we say, well, sorry, but we'll have to make a selection. But in that choosing, we try to have a good as possible mix of people in the session. So we don't direct who sits on what table, but just at that particular session. So yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Sounds tricky. Thank you.
It's an ungrateful job. Let's do one more question, but it's on you then to have a shorter coffee break. If you want, give me a... Yeah, I see nodding. Okay, we'll have one more question.
Yeah, hi. I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll stand up. This is amazing. I live in London, and I can't imagine working with local authorities like this. So it seems that they are very advanced and mature in using and working with service designers in this way. How did you get there? how did you get the buy-in in the first place and, you know, a seat at the table?
It's a good question. I live in London as well.
We can talk then.
And we'd love to do more of these projects. Actually, last year for the first time we have. But that was on invitation of a resident group of an estate in the city of London. But yeah, we'd love to do more work. But it's true that the history isn't that established as in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, participatory processes are almost a no-brainer, although I need to say the traditional way is not a good way. That's a consultation at the end and everybody complains. So yeah, just the people who started working in 2016 recognized from other projects we did that it was a method that could be useful, and they really love it. So it's now built into the policy for new redesign. So it's almost like every serious redesign of an area needs to do this kind of participation.
Thank you.
Let's make sure that it happens in London as well. All for it. Yeah.
Perfect. Just a quick thank you to our speakers, Geke, Meerte, Peter.